Hello everyone. Today we're going to be looking at Results Move 1, approaching the niche. We've already talked about the general structure and functions of the results section, so we're going to start with just looking at one move in particular today. This move is an important one as it scaffolds the rest of your results section. As always, remember that we're going to be discussing these moves in numerical order, 1, 2, 3, 4, but they may appear in different orders in your own papers as well as in the papers that you read in your field. The purpose of Move 1 is really critical in a results section as it allows the author to prepare the reader for what the results are going to include. So we can do this by reiterating relevant information about that niche that motivated your study. So we might say things again that we already discussed in the previous sections of your paper. We might also address specific choices that you made in the study that would somehow help clarify and explain the small niche of your paper. For example, things like the methodological choices that resulted in your particular study. Move 1 may also contain a preview of the results section. It might kind of highlight the sorts of things you're going to include later in the rest of the paper. This move may be optional depending on how your paper is structured and also the different sorts of expectations in your field. But when it's present, it often serves as a connector to move between the method section and the results section to kind of tie your paper together as a whole. So there are 3 steps within Move 1, and all of these may or may not be present in any particular section. We're going to go through each step separately, and as I just mentioned in the moves, the steps, of course, we order in a linear order. We're going to go through one by one, but of course they may occur in different orders, and they may overlap or exist in the same sentence together, just like with the moves. I'm going to discuss the general purpose of each of the steps, ways that we indicate that step, and show you examples of what each step looks like in a real paper. Okay, so the first step we're going to talk about today is providing general orientation. And this step is where we put in information that provides background information that relates to our study. So this background information could be theoretical, empirical information. It could be many different types of things, but somehow it's information that's related to the study that helps prepare readers for the results you're about to explain to them. And we can give this information with or without referencing previous works. So sometimes you may see a citation, but you won't necessarily see one. We use this step to situate the study within the results in the relevant field, so how our study is related to the field or how our particular results work within that field. Provide some sort of conceptual framework, so maybe some sort of reminder of the theoretical background that's useful when we're going to be talking about our results. To discuss or remind the readers about the methods, techniques, practices that were used in the study, orient the reader, provide some sort of information about indicating the order and the content of the rest of the information. So let's look at the rest of the examples here that will help us see how providing general orientation can work. So what we have here, in this section, we characterize the design processes for the freshman and the senior groups using the measures presented in section 2.4 and discuss the measures that correlated with quality of solution. So here we've got some information that really orients the reader. We're kind of highlighting what's going to happen in the rest of the paper. In this section we characterize. We get some details about what we're going to do in the section, and then the other half of the sentence, and discuss the measures. So in both cases, we're providing information about what's going to happen in the rest of this section of the paper. Okay, the next step I want to talk with you about is called restating study specifics. And the function of this step is to go back and re-say the specifics of the study that are particularly relevant for the results we're about to discuss. These can include things like the methods or approaches that were used in the study, different information about how the experiment worked, procedures, the analysis, hypothesis and research questions perhaps. But anything that the author thinks is particularly useful for the reader as the reader is about to see what the results are. And we use this step to remind the reader of those specific elements of the study, to point out the connection between those specific facts about the study and the results. So somehow these particular study attributes are related to the results, and we want the reader to see those connections. And that can help the reader also see how the results came about. How is it that we found this particular answer? And this step can be accomplished by pointing to some sort of visual representation. This could be a graph, a table, or a figure, as well as text. So be aware of language that points us towards a particular visual device. So here's an example. It says, the final products were obtained by precipitation of the reaction mixture into ethanol, followed by recrystallization of the crude product in DMF ethanol or THF ethanol. So here I've underlined for you some of the key elements of this sentence. We have the final products were obtained. This is this reminder of what the methodology of the study really was. We get some information about what that procedure was that the authors used. They used some sort of chemical reaction, we assume, some precipitation reaction, and they got some final products. And these final products were therefore used in the rest of the study. So this is kind of a way to remind us what happened, or if we didn't actually read the methods section as a reader, to tell us for the first time. Okay. The next step and the last step to talk about in this move is justifying study specifics. And the function of this step is to present an argument, a justification, for certain choices that were related to the study. So, for example, we might provide an argument of why we use specific choices. We might reiterate the importance of those choices. So, for example, let's look at this sentence here. We have the specific procedure used in this study was chosen because it was simple, reproducibly formed O NCs of a specific size, and generated NCs that were stable in ethanol. So we have three rationales here about why the specific procedure was chosen. And what we have is this sort of argument, this justification of how the authors ended up with the specific details of their study. And this could be important to include in the beginning of the results section because it might highlight the actual results that you got. Okay, the next section here I'm going to give you an example of one sentence from a results section, and your job is to figure out which of these steps it matches. Okay, so as we do this, feel free to pause your video playback so you have time to read the sentence and really think about it, and then press play again and I'll talk you through the answer. Here's your first step. Okay, let's look at it together. I've highlighted in red here some of the key words in this step. It says the transfer of ions out of the middle chamber was also examined on the base of Na positive accumulation in the cathode chamber relative to that of K positive. Okay. So this is another example, or this is our first example of the restating study specifics. Right? These are the sorts of details that the authors likely told us in the methods section, but they're bringing back and highlighting for us here in the results section, the specific details of their study. Here's another step. Okay, let's look at the step together. The analyte solution was frequently replaced every 12 hours to avoid substrate limitations for bacteria on the anode or changes in pH. Okay, I've highlighted again some important information here, and we get these keywords was frequently replaced to avoid substrate limitations. And we get an explanation here, a justification of why the authors chose to do something. And when you're thinking explanation, justification, that should point you in the direction of the step justifying study specifics. So this is a place where the authors are saying, okay, well, we did this for these reasons. Our next step. Okay, let's look at this one together. It has been noticed previously that the chemical shifts of the imidazolinium ring protons are both anion and concentration dependent, with the highest differences observed in the C2 proton, the most acidic hydrogen at the aromatic ring. Those of you who are in this field are going to laugh at my pronunciation of some of your key terms, but the concepts remain the same. And here we want to notice the very beginning where it says, it has been noticed previously. We get this information that this is a reminder of what other people in other places have done. This is previous research. We can also see at the very end that there's a citation, that number 37, in this particular citation style. So this information, this previous research, tells us that this is the step providing general orientation. This is the place in the results section where we might rely on previous research. Okay, now that we've talked about the 3 different steps and looked at examples of those 3 steps, your task is to look at the reading section for Move 1. And then take that information, the information we've discussed here, and go look at your corpus yourself. See how this move is realized in your particular subfield. Complete the corpus exploration task and quiz, as always. And then in the next presentations, we're going to start looking at the results moves 2, 3, and 4.